Good morning, everyone. Thank you for watching another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. My name is Suzanne, and I'm the head coach at G.R.A.C.E Financial Coaching. And today we are talking with Shemeca Cooper. I'm so excited to have her here. She's actually local to me, so that's very exciting. But
Yes.
Shemeca's got a lot going on. So, Shemeca is the founder and the CEO of Namesake Real Estate and Namesake Properties. She's an experienced real estate professional, an innovative thinker, and an influential leader. And she brings proven experience in property analysis, teamwork, and community engagement. Her degree in education from the University of West Florida and successful completion of the entrepreneurial program at Joseph Business School has equipped Shemeca to be an agent of change in her industry. Recently, Shemeca has been awarded a certificate of registration from the Copyright Office. This is so cool. For the creation of the Road to Restoration program and curriculum, a 5-year biblically based program that takes low-income residents through mental and financial empowerment classes to help them thrive financially and become completely self-sufficient. Shemeca, I can't believe you had time to talk to us today.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. It's an honor just to come and just share.
Yeah, so I know you and I have spoken before, but tell us a little bit more about your experience developing the Road to Restoration program and curriculum, because when I first heard about it, I was blown away.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, it started about last year as I was going through the Joseph Business School, which is a phenomenal program, which they last year made it fully scholarshiped for. Yes, so it's 100%
Nice.
scholarship, no expense for the participants that go through. So while I was going through this and just really learning, really how to hear God and understand the plan for business, I was challenged to just go beyond where my original vision and mission was for my companies. And so, as I was going through this program, I want to say right towards the end, the Road to Restoration program just it was birthed. In my spirit, and so I was just like, okay, how do I do this? And I have a degree in education, so I understood how to write lesson plans and things like that. But structuring an entire curriculum, I was just like, okay, what do I do? So, um, in much prayer and seeking just great counsel from some individuals at some of the universities here, Regent being one of them.
Mm.
So I definitely want to shout them out. I just began to just draft it, and it started at first as an outline, and as that outline began to just grow and develop, a 5-year program was created, and I had so much fun doing it, and just creating it and going over what I would teach and how it would be taught and different things like that. So it was a joy, and then
Mm.
nearly a year later it was completed, and I submitted it for copyright, and I just recently received the certificate for it.
I can't believe it took you only a year to come up with the whole curriculum.
Right.
This sounds like a lifelong project to me. And two, the idea to copyright it, where did you get that from? Was that from one of the mentors that you spoke with? Did somebody mention that to you?
No, it wasn't anything that anyone mentioned, but in the process, I knew while I was creating it for low income residents, um, I saw its potential to be used for something more for
Mm.
students, for young adults, for teenagers, and just for adults in general who desired to go further with their finances. So. Um, I decided, in the future, possibly it could be licensed out
Yeah,
to other
not a bad
organizations.
idea. I volunteered virtually for an all boys school in downtown Indianapolis, so not a great area. And I bet you that would be something that just right off the top of my head, I can already think of 2 or 3 places that would utilize this. And that was for high school boys, in inner city areas that, definitely only had one parent at home for sure. Some of them had no parents and had, being raised by grandparents, and they had to keep a certain GPA to stay in the school. and all that stuff. But definitely right off the top of my head, I can think of 2 or 3 places where this application would be appropriate. So tell us a little bit more about exactly what, not exactly, but a general overview of what the road to restoration training looks like for either the high school student or the adult in the situation.
Yes, absolutely. So it is broken down into four sections and two parts. So there's an instructional phase and then there's an implementation phase, where the first year of the program is really learning. Learning, and then the latter years are implementing what you've learned. And so the first portion of the instruction is really dealing with belief systems. Um, you know, Many times the reason why people don't progress ahead is because there's a certain belief that they can't. Whether that comes from their environment, whether that comes from experiences, there's kind of a that blocker there that says, well, I can't do this, or whether it's because of a person's ethnic background. So we really go through dispelling those beliefs that
Mm,
truly the only person that can stop you is you. It's not your genetic makeup, it's not your ethnic background, it's not what you've experienced, because all these things have been dispelled in the past. And we even give examples of individuals who have overcome and have created success not only for themselves but for others. Um, in spite of what the social or the status quo was, that you couldn't do it or for whatever reason. So we go through that and really just deal with the mindset, because it starts there. If
yeah.
you really truly believe that you can do this, then you can. And it's been shown. And so we go through that, and then after that we go through budgeting, and what that looks like, and then we go through wealth building and building wealth for the next generation. So it is a very in-depth program. And you mentioned that it only took a year. It truly was God, because when I look back at it, I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is this is a full-on curriculum. So it
Right. A
truly,
multi-year, multi-layer curriculum that you developed in a year. It is truly, there are definitely days where I get more done than I thought. And I'm like, how did I get all that stuff done in 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever it was? And I'm like, God just gave me a couple extra hours today.
right. Yeah.
Because there's no other explanation for it. I couldn't physically have done, Blast Wednesday was a nightmare, and I couldn't get 2 things done. And
Right.
this coming Tuesday, I got 18 things done. And so I'm like,
Right.
oh, thanks for the extra hour, God. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
Well, so now the road to restoration, your career in real estate. Obviously, prior to that, I'm sure you had some things that maybe, you'd made your own mistakes.
Yes.
So the reason for this show is to help people realize we've all been there, right?
Yes.
Now you're the expert on all this, but we've all made financial mistakes in the past, and hopefully everyone listening can learn from the experience of others. So
Yes.
Shemeca, what would you say is the dumbest thing you've personally ever done with money?
Oh my goodness. Actually, it was in real estate. And
Yep.
that was, so working with a project, one of my first ones. I was very new,
Hmm.
to real estate and wasn't familiar with, the quoting and the pricing of certain things. And so rather than going and getting multiple quotes, because I had been working with this person for a little while, I went
Okay.
ahead and went with their quote and spent too much
Oh, gotcha.
on
So
some
was this a
renovation.
commercial property or residential property?
A residential property.
Residential property. So we're talking about a handyman, an HVAC contractor, something
Yes.
along that line where
Yeah.
you probably could have farmed it out and
Yes.
gotten more feedback. Gotcha.
Exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
And so that was a ouch, and
Mm.
definitely a learning lesson, to do my due diligence, and learn really your craft and your field. Because I did not know, which, I mean, everybody has to start somewhere. But it definitely catapulted me into learning as much as I could. I don't plan on laying sheetrock or doing electrical work or things like that, but I have an idea of what those repairs and things cost now.
Right. Yeah.
And
And that is right. That's not just a learning curve for somebody who's in residential real estate or like myself. I had spent many years in commercial real estate. That's a homeowner's, how many times have you seen, I'm sure you've got stories, somebody who purchased a home, they were told it needed a new roof, but they didn't really know what that entailed, right?
mhm. Exactly, exactly. And that's really what it is just going that little extra step. It may seem tedious, but it is time saving and pocket saving
Yeah.
in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, and we always hear of the emergencies, right?
Mhm.
The one that we always use as a financial coaches is if you buy a house and you can't afford to replace that water heater the next day, you can't buy this house. You
Right.
just can't. That's the water heater is the number one thing that goes like the fridge or the water heater. And you're not living in that house. I don't care where you are. You're
Yeah,
not living in that house without a fridge or a water heater. So if you're
exactly.
buying a house and you've overextended yourself, right? I'm sure you've seen this too.
Yes.
And you can't replace that hot water heater the next day,
Yeah.
you probably shouldn't be buying that house. But
Yeah.
in order to know that, you have to know what the water heater costs.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Look,
Mhm.
and the labor to install it, even if you're buying it yourself and you're having someone come in install it. Okay, what is the going rate for labor for this? So it is, like I said, it seems, tedious, but it helps in the long run and is cost saving and in the end time saving. You front load the work to put in the
Right.
time to do it, and that way you can kind of cruise on the back end. So,
It is such a learning curve though. Even we've got an issue at my house right now. Literally, I've got somebody coming this afternoon and we have water intrusion and we cannot for the life of us figure out where it's coming from. And I finally identified the spot. But if I showed you where it is and then I told you there was water getting inside on the sheetrock, you'd be like, you're a crazy person. Like
it
right? And water will get in wherever water feels like getting in, right?
yeah. Look, if there's an opening, look, it oh my goodness.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. I was the general manager of major commercial properties during Hurricane Sandy and Hurricane Irene in
Oh
the
my god.
Northeast. And
Oh yeah.
let me tell you, water will get in wherever water feels like getting in. And so
Yes.
even just knowing, okay, now I've identified where it's coming in, I still should be somewhat knowledgeable enough to know that the gentleman I have coming this afternoon, who is someone I've worked with, and I could fall
Mhm,
into that same trap of, well, I've known him for so long, I'm just going to go
mhm,
with him, blah 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 blah. I
yeah,
still need to have some idea of what lumber costs right now because it's
mhm,
involving our front porch, which is made of wood. I still need to have some idea of what if these gutters need to be completely redone? What
mhm,
if this is not, what if the roof flashing is, so there's all these multiple layers. So what do
yes,
you tell a residential real estate client or somebody who comes to you and asks for advice? And
mm.
you realize one, they may be in over their heads, but two, they probably don't have the money to buy the property they're looking at and maintain it safely. What do you tell that person?
If they are looking and they're not in the property, they're looking to buy and don't have the finances, I would say wait.
Mm,
Wait just a little bit until they can at least build up a nice nest egg to be able to afford it. And for those that are already in a property and maybe the expenses have, maintenance work on it has kind of gone above what they thought they could handle, there are actually programs in cities that will help homeowners with making certain repairs. I know definitely in Virginia there are tons of where I am, where we are. There are different programs that will assist. Especially if you're elderly, there are programs in the cities. You just have to contact the city and say, "Hey, listen, um, there's certain repairs that either I can't do or because of disability or whatever have you, or I just the the price of it is too much.
Right.
So there are different programs out there because cities, honestly, when you leave a house, unmaintained, eventually it becomes one, an eyesore. Two, it drives down the property values of where it is. And three, it becomes a liability for the city because if it has to be demoed because it's been left so long, that's an expense that the city and the community and the residents have to bear. So they really are desiring to help residents. So
Right. Step in now before it
mhm,
gets to a place where the taxpayer, the local taxpayer is assuming the burden of demoing or repairing, or, becomes condemned and then it just sits there.
yes.
That would be the worst case scenario, really. You're better off, having somebody take it down sooner. Believe it
Yeah.
or not, the city I'm in has and I'm not a big fan of government overreach. I'm sure
Yeah.
anybody who's listened to this show before knows
Right.
that. But the city I'm in actually has a you can report somebody's house, or like an the only time I've ever heard of it was a house that was not being lived in at the time.
Mm,
If there's plants growing in the gutters,
wow.
the city will issue a warning and then a ticket.
Hmm.
And I was shocked. I had never heard of that before. And I'm like, well, it's like a little overbearing, right? Like, calm down, okay?
Yeah.
But literally what you said just nailed it on the head. It's
Hmm.
if those gutters are full enough of dirt and debris to be growing things,
Right.
where is that water going?
Exactly.
It's going
Exactly.
back into the house. It's the roof. It's sitting on top of the roof, depending on the angle of the roof, right? And
Hmm.
so maybe the trees are too close to the roof,
Yeah.
and that's where all the debris is coming from. And if we have a bad hurricane, one of those giant branches is coming down on somebody sleeping in the master bedroom.
Yes.
And so I was like, once I thought about it, I was like, wow. I was like, I guess of all the crazy
Hmm.
government rules out
Right.
there, that one I'm okay with.
Yes. And honestly, it's an indicator that there may be other things going on, that the house isn't being well maintained. So,
Right. Right.
yep.
And in this particular situation, it was somebody that the house was unoccupied for a period
Hmm.
of time. And oddly enough, we had seen somebody coming to that you saw the old dishwasher come out and the new dishwasher go in. So somebody was working on it. Maybe they just didn't even notice the gutters, or they didn't realize the importance of keeping them clear in an area that gets as much rain as we get here.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, but that's such an excellent point about stopping the train on its tracks right there before it gets too far gone and the
Yeah.
house becomes a problem for the greater community.
Yes.
What in right now we're recording this, it's July of 2023. The interest rates are still crazy. Compared to where they were a couple years ago, right? When I closed
Right.
on my house, I was pissed off that I had to pay 3%.
Right.
6 months earlier, it was 2%, you
Right.
know, and now we're looking at, I think the last 2 people I heard of who closed on a house got 6 point something, and one of them was quoted 9
Oh,
in the
yeah.
area they were in. So you've got a client, you've got somebody you're representing, maybe it's you are investing for your company and purchasing a house, and you're looking at an 8-9% interest rate right now.
Hmm.
What do you do?
um, Definitely prepare for it. But also looking at, because with that goes in the price of the home, the taxes in that area. So really being mindful of all of that because it factors in and plays a big part. So I
Yeah.
would definitely say interest rate is definitely one thing to look at, but the price of the home, because that's what the interest rate, the cost will be based off of is the price and the taxes as well, and utilities.
Oh, no, that's a great point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Especially in an area where you're using air conditioning for really 6 months out of the year, 5
yes,
months if you're lucky.
yes.
Um, and then, I have a friend who's in North Carolina, and for some reason, the house has electric heat.
Oh wow,
And it's a new build, like, within the last 5 years.
wow. Oh yeah.
And yeah, and so they were telling us how their electric bill was actually higher in the winter this past year than in the summer because they were super diligent in the summer and
Right.
making sure like they didn't have the house any cooler than 72 and
Mhm.
keeping the blinds closed and blah blah blah. And I said, "How on earth is your heat? How is your utility more expensive in the winter? I don't understand." But
Yeah.
electric heat, and it goes back to what you said for the first 2 minutes that we started talking about educating yourself and knowing electric
Yes.
heat costs more than gas heat.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was gonna say in our area, they actually what they were doing for utilities to get it, either start a new service, they had a deposit fee. Well, as of July 1, they got rid of the deposit fee.
Oh, I didn't
Just
know that.
yes, yes, just because of the cost of things. So, yes, that's commercial and residential. They have
Interesting.
waived the deposit fee to turn on and start your utilities.
Wow. So when I moved from New York to California, I had never paid a deposit fee in New York, ever, 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 ever. But I got to California years ago, and they're like, "Yeah, it's $250 to start your service."
Yeah.
I almost fell out of my chair. They had a caveat though. If you could get a letter from the previous energy company
Mm.
stating that you had never had one late payment, they would waive the fee.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I mean, I there must have been a time where I paid it a day late, right? Like just
Right.
accidentally, like not that I didn't have the money, I just wasn't paying attention. I didn't have that bill on auto pay. I'm
Right.
like, crap. I'm a financial coach now, and I'm thinking to myself, there must have been one time in my entire renting and owning life in the Northeast that
Right.
I was, one day late. Sure enough, I hadn't been,
Wow.
and I was like, that is insane. That's
Wow.
an insane request to be making.
Yeah.
I guess in my mind, I would have said, if you were late 3 times, we're gonna charge you this 250. Do you know what I'm
Right.
saying? 'Cause life gets in the way, right? You get back from vacation and you're like,
Mhm.
"Ah, crap, it's the 9th. The bill was due on the 8th."
Right.
That's an honest mistake. But
Yes,
yes, $250 to set up service in Southern California.
I
And
know.
sure enough, I had to pay it to get
Mhm.
it on
Yeah.
and then submit the letter and then hope that they got the letter and liked the letter enough to give me the 250 back.
Right, reimburse you, I know. I'm like, "Is this going towards the bill that I'll be getting?"
Right, and you know what? Now that I think about it, because I was renting in California, kinda shame on the apartment complex. It was like a corporate apartment complex, like, to
Yeah,
not let somebody who's coming from out of state know that, now that I think about
yeah,
it. I had no
yeah,
idea. How would I have known that?
exactly,
I'd never even heard of it before. So,
exactly.
all comes back to educating yourself, right, Shamika?
Yes, it does, I'm telling you.
So, going back in time to the repair that you had made, what would you specifically do differently, knowing what you know now?
Yes, so, and actually it was kinda in the middle, that I realized, so the property had termite damage, so the whole back wall had to be taken out and done. And so they quoted me a price, and because I was already working with them for the renovation of the house, they had already, ripped out the carpet, started all the other stuff. They quoted me a price, and I was like, "Ugh, okay, go ahead with the work."
Mhm.
Um, but then they started, coming towards the front, and so part of the front wall had termite damage, and they quoted me a price for it. Well, the gentleman, had said, "Hey, we'll send you to our person that
Mm.
does it, so that we, because we understand you've already had to come out for this. We'll send you to our person to get a quote, and that way, we won't be involved in it. You won't have to pay the contractor fee for that." And I said, "Okay, perfect." So the person quoted me a price for it, and I just was like, "That's a little high,"
Okay.
seeing as though I just paid this price for an entire wall, and then you're quoting me this price for a portion of the wall. It just didn't.
Oh.
The math wasn't mathing, is what my my husband says that. So I'm gonna use his term. The math wasn't mathing,
Right.
uh, and so I said, that's a bit steep. I think I'm gonna go ahead and go and see if I can get a different price. And so it was funny because I was in Home Depot and I had made really good friends with the gentleman at Home Depot. I suggest you do that. That's in one of the store, Lowe's, Home Depot, because they work there, so they're not getting commissions and things like that by helping you. And
Mhm.
they're very knowledgeable. They see contractors, they come in and out, and they have a good rapport with contractors. So I would suggest one of the big box stores. It doesn't have to be those two, whatever store you have in your area.
Right.
um, Become friends with them.
That's a great idea.
Yes. um, but so as I was talking with him about some things, he was giving me some information. And so as I was leaving out, there was a gentleman that stopped me and said, "Hey, I saw that you were looking to have some work done. My brother does work." And so he gave me his information. I said, "Okay, well, thanks."
Oh,
And so, I put it in my phone and kept going on and was looking for some more things. And then he came back up in my mind and said, "I'm going to give him a call." And so called him. He came out. The price he quoted me was a third of what? A third of what I was quoted from the other
oh,
guy. And I said, one, thank you. But two,
right,
I
right,
wish I would have called him for the back wall.
right. Oh, I know.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
but it's so much. I mean, now you know, and you have that
Mhm.
contact, and
Yes.
those contacts are, like you said about the person at Home Depot or Lowe's, they're invaluable.
Hmm.
When you found somebody who is reasonable and is going to do the work, and then you use them, and then you use them again, and then you use them again. And termites in the majority of the country, if you're the lower half of the country, if you don't experience a certain level of freezing in your area, guys,
Yeah. Yes.
termites are a big problem for the lower half of the country, because if the entire space doesn't get to freezing and kill everything inside of the walls and inside of your crawl space and all that stuff, you're susceptible to termites. So where I grew up in New York and I went to college in Connecticut, there's no termites up there. It is
Right.
so rare. I mean, I remember seeing a house being tented for the first time and my father was an engineer, a civil engineer. I'm like, what on God's green earth is going on at that house? And
Yeah.
for some reason they'd had termites.
Hmm.
And so, he explained the house was probably sealed up too much. There was
Moisture.
probably
Yeah.
too much humidity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
But where we are in the South and Southern California and pretty much the bottom half of the country, that is a real concern. And termites are costly.
Yes, yes, and
Yeah.
I'm from Midwest, so yeah, it gets cold. It gets very
It-
cold. So
right. It's cold enough up there. Right.
right,
Hmm.
you don't have that unless, like you said, there's moisture and it's sealed up, and then you have the issue. But no, other than that, no. But yes, in this
So
area,
not only were you overcoming, the person giving you a bad quote, but you were lack of knowledge. Again, just, having to learn that stuff and learn it the hard way. But, now everyone listening can hear.
yes,
Well, Shemeca, I want to say thank you again and we love your honesty and share your financial blunder with us. I hope
yes.
everybody will join us again next week for another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. And Shemeca's contact information is going to be in our show notes. You can find her at namesakeproperties.com, along with via email and on LinkedIn. Shemeca, thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.